This is Dr. B, host of The Dr. B Show and founder of Borja Consulting Group, a company that helps businesses grow through strategy, branding, and marketing. And this is Jamiah Battle, founder of Proelium Legacy Partners, where he helps business owners increase company value, prepare for successful exits, and build lasting wealth and legacy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. B Show. I'm here with the great Jamiah Battle. Jemiah, how you doing, man?
I'm doing amazing, man. How you doing, Dr. B?
Doing great. I'm glad you got the memo. We're both wearing beige, apparently. I just realized that.
It's Earth Tone Day, man.
Yeah, there you
Tone.
go. I hear you, man. Let's jump right into it. I'm excited to learn about you and what you're doing now, helping folks on the back end once they're ready to exit. So I'm excited to have that conversation, and that's a space that I'm playing with as well. So I think it's going to be a fantastic convo, and I think it's going to be great for my listeners as well, man. So question one, easy one, layup. Tell everyone about yourself.
Man, my name is Jamiah Battle, and I'm the founder and principal of Proelium Legacy Partners. We're a value growth advisory transition readiness firm. We kind of help businesses get not necessarily to exit, but to grow a high strategic capacity business that can demand premium enterprise value, and any times what gives them, which helps them to ensure their legacy, fortify their wealth, engineer their freedom, and give them that clarity, control, and command that they need in the marketplace.
Makes sense. So not necessarily an exit. It could be an M&A. It could be going public, right, all the above, right? So good.
Absolutely, all the above, all the above. I'm also a father, fiance, father, author. Yeah, man, author, dad, brother, and friend also.
Good. You're my friend, so that's the most important. Good. Excellent. I noticed I was checking out your profile prior to this interview today. So I know you also do a lot of you in the past certified social and emotional intelligence coach, also mental health first aid, and lastly, what you're doing now as a certified exit planning advisor from Exit Planning Institute. Like, how important was all that education into what you're doing today?
Oh man, it was 100% needed and vital, man. Everything about business that a lot of people sometimes can forget is that, people say it's business to business, business to customer, but all business is person to person. And so all of that coaching and training and social and emotional fitness and just being a good person, that business is still human. It's still person to person. And so that helped me be a better person for myself with my own self-awareness, but it also helped me in relational and social awareness and making sure that I, always listen from an empathetic place, but also from a personal standpoint and listening to the founders, where they're at, where they're trying to go, but also listening to the legacy that they want to leave and how can I help them get there.
Yeah, it's so important. A lot of people get it lost in translation. Whether it's they say, oh, B2B or B2C or B2G, business of government, but they forget that at the end of the day, it's a people business, right? And it's all about understanding the personalities and everything that goes behind, the individuals, right? So I like that. I love that. Um, Great point. Um, Speaking of author, about 10 years ago, you also wrote Process You to Success, Three Steps to Achieving Higher Success in Life, Career, Relationships. What was the origins or why did you write that book?
Oh man. Actually, before I forget, I'm actually doing a second edition to that book within the next 30 days. And so since I'm
I love
here to
it.
talk to
Please,
you about
please send us the link and we'll be more than happy to promote it and all that stuff.
it,
So
absolutely, man. So I got to hold myself accountable to getting that out within the next 30 days because I've said it now. But yeah, the process with that book it started out very personal, man. I got into emotional intelligence and emotional fitness training and stuff from my own personal life, man. I grew up, like most kids in my generation, single mom, taking care of four of us, elderly grandparents, and in the 80s and the 90s. And so my mom was pretty tough, and so I didn't grow up with a lot of emotional intelligence. So it wasn't until my early 20s with a couple failed businesses I found out I had children on the way, and life was just happening. I started to battle my mother. I had to institute her in a mental hospital. She had a chemical, what they called then a chemical imbalance when I was my senior year of high school. Had a chemical imbalance when I was 16, turning 17. And so a lot of responsibilities. My father, who I later found out struggled with mental health from his college years, I mean, well, until his passing here recently, he struggled with mental health. So it was around my environment and I didn't know it. So my early 20s, man, I just really took that inner journey when my outside world was going crazy. And something, you call it God, you call it the universe, told me when everything is getting crazy on the outside, go in. So I learned about emotional intelligence and learned how emotionally obese, for lack of better terms, I was. I just wasn't raised that way. So I went down a rabbit hole, man, and one, working on myself and developing not only my emotional intelligence, but my emotional fitness, actually being able to practice it. And uh, I just wanted others to have the tools to do the same. I started using it in my corporate setting, in my training background, in various professions I had, and then I incorporated my own business and teaching leaders and companies how to become more socially emotionally fit to help them with retention and stuff. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna challenge myself and see can I write a book, because every time I learn or read a book or learn something, I take notes as if I'm gonna teach it or gonna have to teach it to somebody. It's just a habit I had. And so all my notes I had from working on myself, I said, you know what, I'm gonna challenge myself and see can I turn this into a book that can be of service to others. And so that's how the book, long story short, that's how the book came about.
Yeah, I love it. How was you able to use your personal experience or what you've what happened at home, and, and basically, like you said, being able to write things down and being able to help, like eventually help your clients and folks around you when it comes to that. And then, like you said, you always write it down and then so you could teach others, right? So I love that. That's pretty interesting. And then tell me about like the process. Just a follow up. Like, did you self-publish? Did you use a publisher? Like, tell me like the cover. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely, man. So in 2000 and
Now I think right now would be a lot easier, right, with AI and all that. But I'm pretty sure back then.
oh my goodness. Man. So in 2015, the kind of self-publishing was kind of starting to begin
Yeah.
with Amazon. At that time, it was Amazon Publishing. Now I think they're strictly Kindle Publishing, but at that time, man, the self-publish was like finding out how to do that was like top secret. You had to go through a major publisher. So at the time, man, I would research it, trying to go through a major publisher. And most of the major publishers, just the deals, the upfront costs for myself or the percentages they would get, it just didn't make sense at the time. So, I'm a learner, so I said, if it's not that, I'm going to learn how to do it, which I don't know if it's good or bad. So I figured it out, man. I put resources together. I said, you know what? I'm going to start a self-publishing imprint and self-publish this book myself. And I figured it out. And within 90 days, man, probably a lot of no sleep days. In 90 days, I published that book, a workbook, and probably started to draft on four others. I kind of zoned out for 3 months, man, and got it. So yeah, it was definitely self-published. It was a lot, but it was a good journey and a good exercise to do.
I love it. And then from a marketing standpoint, and I'll move on after that. Is did you was you like your own agent as far as being able to book yourself as far as talks and all that? Tell me about that back in 2015.
Man. So again, we're talking about 2015. So at this time, I think Facebook came around 2009, 10, and then around, I don't know, maybe a couple of years after that is when we had Instagram. So right around that time, I met a guy. He was managing T. Julian Gibson. I'll make sure I say his name. He was out in L.A. And he was managing, a lot of famous people from Toya Jackson to to Lisa Ray, to a lot of people, man. And he found me on LinkedIn. I started doing more posts, and he got me on Instagram. And he introduced me to Instagram. He said, "Hey, man, with your work you're doing with these companies, and you're trying to help people become emotionally fit, and you're about to release a book, man. You need to get on Instagram." I'm like, nah, I don't really care about social media. So once I got on Instagram, I started posting a little bit then about emotional fitness and my book coming out. And from Instagram, man, I've always been great at relationship building and try to be authentic. And from Instagram and LinkedIn, I started building relationships with publicists, along with coming back and forth to Atlanta and different places. I started building a relationship with publicists, and so speaking engagements, connecting with organizations for youth and nonprofits with emotional and social intelligence. Those things just kept happening. It was mainly through, old school method, shaking hands, kissing babies, but also Instagram was just coming out too, and people were able to see my work and connect me with the right people. So yeah, I was my agent, publicist, spokesperson, all of
Only
it.
about social media ambassador, only about. I love it.
All the above, man.
I love it. I love it. Good, good, good. Excellent, excellent. You've been helping entrepreneurs, or you've been an entrepreneur for the past 18 years, helping folks scale or help scale. Like, what have you learned from your journey up to this point?
Exactly that, man. It's a journey. The gold isn't in the outcome. The gold is in the journey. Just staying true to yourself, staying resilient, staying focused on your purpose and who you're becoming in the process. And that one thing I always say to myself, all things work for my good. And another thing that I like to say is that sometimes it's an old John Maxwell book called "Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn." But I like taking it a step further and says sometimes you win, most times you learn, which further sets you up to win in the future. So just keeping that perspective, man, that as long as you get the lesson, as long as I get a lesson that I can apply immediately to my next step, it's always a win-win. And just managing the mental and emotional part in the process of all of it. It's all a journey.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, I love that. And then, never say lose, right? You always, it's either a win or you're learning experience for the
Absolutely.
next time. I
Absolutely.
love that. I'm gonna fast forward to 2 years ago now, right? So, what is it? How do you pronounce it? Proelitium?
Proelium Legacy
Proelium. Yes,
Partners.
Proelium Legacy
Proelium.
Partners.
Yeah,
Proelium. I'm gonna butcher that.
no
So it
problem.
started 2 years ago, right? So tell us, like, how did that all come about officially, like on paper?
On paper, it came about from, so for years that we talked about, I was doing consulting with companies for years, helping them to, retention, increasing their bottom line, grow their leadership, all those intangible capitals that value a business, from their social capital, human capital, marketing capital, all those internal things that makes or breaks a business when it is for evaluation go. I didn't know I was doing that. And so what happened was I came across a very big person in private equity, Robert E. Smith, who owns Vista Equity Group. I got to go hear him speak. While he was speaking, he was talking about what he does and some of his team, and what I did. And I was like, I help businesses do X, Y, Z. And they said, brother, you've been in private equity and you didn't know it. And so come to find out, I've been having a lot of companies get ready to be acquired or to make strategic acquisitions. And they wanted me to kind of come in and clean up those internal values. I just didn't know what to call it. So went down a rabbit hole of private equity, got some great mentors, great training, great certifications, and decided that I wanted to start kind of my own, what they call ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition. Like, well, I can buy these companies for myself, versus just being a consultant to help, being a consultant. So I went down a rabbit hole and I went in, got a few companies in the healthcare space for personal, passions or whatever. I said, I'm going to, define my buy box. I'm gonna, acquire healthcare companies with, this is my buy box. Got a few companies to LOI, and just to find out because I knew how to look at them that I would have been buying a job. A lot of these companies were not ready. A lot of people talk about the baby boomer, the silver tsunami. And the truth of the matter is the majority of the companies, maybe 80% of them or more, are not ready to be sold. They're still very owner independent, messy financials, never had any type of SOP systems, any type of those internal things that really would make or break a business and making it transferable. So out of getting frustrated out of that, uh, another friend of mine who lives in the UK. he was telling me, he said, hey, why don't you, these businesses that you're getting up on the LOI, why don't you just help them become, enterprise ready and help them become, transferable and, of course, get your equity and possibly buy them yourself. But won't you help them because since you have so much experience helping the founders, and also you can help the founders become personal ready and also emotionally ready and emotionally fit for the transition themselves. So that shifted my whole mindset in doing it. And he said, by the way, it's an organization called Exit Planning Institute, and they're kind of the premier source or ground is for exit planning. So once you go there, get it's called a CEPA, your Certified Exit Planning Advisory Certification. So went through the program. Again, I love learning. Went through the program, and come to find out, a lot of CEPAs doesn't either don't like to or unable to do the actual value growth advisory side in helping the actual owner and the actual business grow so that they'll be able to demand that maximum enterprise value. Do that. Most of CEPAs are your financial wealth advisors, your accountants, and all the ancillary services, your estate planning, those type of things. But the actual value growth work and working hands-on with the owner and their leadership team are only of about maybe, 3 to 5%, even if that much of exit planners actually can do or want to do the value growth advisory work. So I saw the opportunity for myself, but also the opportunity to the exit planning community, but also to baby boomers, to founders, to Gen X and millennials that's looking to, at some point everyone's going to exit their business, whether they transfer to their employees, whether they, become the chairman versus the CEO and make it the, asset class forever, whether they give it to their kids, whether they sell it to private equity, all those different, out of the top 7 ways to transition from your business, everyone's going to get to that point. And the thing that got me was a lot of these baby boomers that worked so hard for these companies are going to be just surprised that at the closing table when they find out their business isn't valued at what they think it is because of things that they could have, as early as as late as 2 years before set up so that they could demand to get the value of what they worked so hard for. So I saw that opening and I saw a need for it. And so I already had the a lot of relationships with private capital, private equity, and a lot of the other, advisor team, financial advisors, the M&A lawyers. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna step in and provide that service to founders and business owners, and kind of be that too from a place from the heart, but also myself as well. So that's how I got to Proelium. So Proelium stands for is actually my last name, Battle is battle, which actually means I had to research my name years ago, but battle comes from they would natives, uh, indigenous Americans would settle in certain lands that had been ripped to shreds, torn apart from battle, and they would come and settle there and restore the lands, help the vegetation get to where it need to be, kind of restore the communities there. And so legacy is what a lot of owners want, they say they need, and what they're concerned about. So I named the company, Proelium Legacy Partners. That I'm not just advising or consulting business. I'm actually partnering with them to make sure, like I said, that we ensure their legacy, fortify their wealth, and engineer their freedom, which gives them options to live the life that they want.
I love it. That's a fantastic story. And basically, you was already doing 90% of the work. You just officially
Yeah,
got it done. Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, segueing into that. So, what are some of the biggest gaps you typically see between the company's current state and what buyers actually value at exit, or how early should this be addressed? I think you started talking about it a little bit earlier, like, the perception of the owner versus reality. Like, what should people work on, like, as early, like you said, as 2 years before they even think about selling?
Absolutely. It's three things that Exit Planning Institute brings out, and then I go a little further with that. It's a personal readiness gap, wealth gap, and value gap. So the value gap, I start with that one since that one's more top of mind with people. The value gap is what the person thinks their business is worth and what the actual it can be worth or what the market conditions will say it will be worth based on where it's currently at. And normally that gap is substantial. What they think is worth, they got a quote from, but their CPA said, yeah, man, so and so sold his business with some, almost the same revenue. He sold his business for, 20 million. So your business is at least worth 15. Come to find out the business may be worth 2. So it's a value, so it's a value gap. The other thing is the wealth gap, and that's the gap that the owner needs to retire or move forward. Again, one of their advisors tell them, hey man, in order for you to make $500,000 for the rest of your life, you're going to need to sell your business for, $10 million. So the wealth gap is outside most business owners, 80% of their net worth, if not more, is in their business. So they're going to have to sell their business for X to get that lifestyle that they want. And come to find out again, it's a huge gap because the business is worth this, you need this, and that's not accounting for taxes, M&A advisory fees, and all those other things that go into there. So it's always a wealth gap. And the last gap is the personal readiness gap is how really, and this is the gap I really like, how really emotionally, mentally is the owner ready to transition from the business as far as socially, community wise, and does he or she has a plan for that part of it, for the identity associated with it, for what they're gonna do, after this, are they gonna stay on as a chairman? They're gonna, are they gonna start another business? Most of them think that they're gonna, I'm gonna get this big liquidity event and I'm gonna move to South Florida and play golf, for the next 20 years. And that lasts maybe about 2 weeks. According to statistics, about 85% of owners that didn't, acquire exit planning or value growth advisory services regret selling their business less than a year later. Only 5% get the value that they think. So again, it's a big gap. What I would say is, so what I help do is make sure that the business help achieve those 3 gaps. Make sure that the business can withstand M&A due diligence. What the value would be if a private equity or strategic partner will come in and do a due diligence to your business, and that's our starting point, and that's where we identify the other gaps at. So I help make sure that they have sustainable and predictable cash flow and profits, sustainable and predictable growth, and sustainable and predictable transferability for their business moving forward. And that puts them, once they do that, that puts them to, in control and gives them the options to take advantage of one of 7 of those exit or transition options.
I love that. I love the breakdown. I actually wrote it down. I was like, yeah, good point. Personal readiness, value, and then the wealth transfer. So all great points. All great points, man. I love it. So speaking of wealth and capital, so how, as you know, I raise capital from real estate standpoint, and I guess a little bit I'm playing in your space a little bit too, right? So how do you align capital strategy with exit planning to maximize valuation, especially when deciding between debt equity or reinvestment?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to simply the human to human part, which is
Yeah.
missing, is that you're great at too. Actually sitting down with the owner and they're sitting down with the owner first and actually seeing what their goals are, short term and long term. Then sitting down with their senior leadership team afterwards, but actually seeing what they plan on doing with the business in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, and then like I said, doing those assessments and getting that clarity on where the business is actually at and what will be needed to reach said goals going forward. So if that's restructuring, is that recapitalizing, is that no, I want to build this business to exit to private equity, in 5 years, in 3 years, or no, you know what, I'm done with it. I just want to, sell it out. So depending on the owner and the legacy they want, again, and going back to those three gaps, what they need, what are they trying to do, and whether they want to give it to their employees and do an ESOP. So depending on the owner, what they want their legacy to be for the business and transition to be, is how we kind of decide which capital partners to go with. So, as you well know, in the capital world, it may be different raising capital to, sometimes to grow versus you're trying to get capital partners to get acquisition to be able to sell. So just depending on the owner and the business is how we decide how to align with which capital needed. How long do you need it? That decides, the percentage rates. If you're trying to grow for the next 10 years, may make a difference in the capital you acquire versus you need to do something within the next year and a half. So it goes back to the person to person and really sitting down and finding out what the owner needs and wants.
Makes a lot of sense, right? And it all depends on, like you said, uh, the situation and the owner, and if it's short term, obviously it'd be a little bit more expensive, and if it's long term, it'd be a little bit cheaper. It all depends on the situation. So I like that. I don't like giving attorney answers. It depends, but it's true. It really does depend. All right,
Absolutely.
man. We're winding down. Nothing against attorneys. Shout out to the attorney. If you're selling a business, right? If you're selling your business, when should you start planning?
um, Yesterday.
Yesterday.
I hate to be the cliche guy. They say the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The next best time is today. But it's true, man. Exit planning, and a lot of people, I try not to use exit planning. I try to use transition readiness because people think exit, like, no, I don't want to exit. Exit can get a bad turn. So I kind of say transition readiness, but honestly, exit planning, transition readiness is just good business strategy. Honestly, a company, in an ideal scenario, it should be part of your business plan from day one. What's your exit or transition strategy? It should be there from day one. But for 98 to 99% of people, it isn't. So the best time, I would say, at a minimum, uh, eight, 18 to 24 months out of potential sale or transition of any sort, 18 to 24 months. And the first year, just getting into baseline and cleaning up. The second year is actually where we would get into really, the different ways to actually grow the business and get it stabilized, inorganically and organically. And then after that, going into year three, now you're at a place to where you can really sustain or have that enterprise value there, and they can go back, as you know, in the M&A world or any valuation, whether it's SBA, capital partners, private equity, they like to see a trailing, what they call a trailing 12 months. They go back a year. And then most of the time, even for financing, even for personal finance, you like to see the last 3 years of your tax returns or P&L statement. So that 18 to 24 months is getting everything ready and the growth trajectory. So when they do look back, they can see the last 3 years, the trajectory of the business. So I would say 18 to 24 months at a minimum. I love to have longer. I would love to have 5 years to work with the company to get it, at maximum enterprise value. But 18 to 24 months minimum.
I love it. Last question, final thoughts. How would you want to close? If you had folks that are like looking to sell, about to sell, what advice would you give them? If you was in a room right now with about 30 entrepreneurs.
Um, Invest in yourself, invest in your future, invest in your legacy. You deserve it. Speak to a value growth advisor, transition readiness specialist, exit planner that can kind of serve as again, another term I like using is quarterback, but kind of serve as that kind of concierge advisor to make sure that your CPA, your financial wealth advisor, your attorneys, and your family and team are all in line with your vision, and get a reputable or trustworthy advisor that is confident to be able to do so before going to market. And before, going down that rabbit hole, because founders and owners deserve the asset that they work for. So treat your business as the asset that it is, but also you owe it to yourself as an entrepreneur. We both know how difficult and trying it is, to even start something. As an entrepreneur, to get the maximum value of your company now, but also at whatever transition that you want.
I love it. Where can people find more information about you, and if they want to contact you for your services?
I'm always on LinkedIn, probably too much. So I'm always on LinkedIn at Jamiah Battle. You can go to my site, Proelium Legacy Partners.com, or shoot me over an email at concierge@proeliumlegacypartners.com. But just shoot me an inbox on LinkedIn. I do check my messages. It's not a AI bot. I do respond. And it's me personally, not my team as well, but it's me personally doing. But yeah, just reach out, man. I'm pretty active, and I try to respond as quickly as possible.
Jemiah, fantastic conversation. We definitely got to do it again on the road. So thank you so much for being on my show.
Absolutely, Dr. B. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Jemiah Battle, everybody.